I'll be the first to admit that I didn't have there being a Chainsaw Man church on my bucket list of things to happen in this story, but I'm ecstatic with the direction this arc took. This arc focuses on a core crux of Denji, his humanity and whether or not he can exist in the world without his powers. Is the normal life Denji always wanted truly the life he envisioned? This question weighs heavily on the scales this entire arc, and it's a key driving force as we navigate between the radical church who want Denji to return to being Chainsaw Man and worship him, and the Public Safety Commission who want Denji to never transform again. As we know with Chainsaw Man, there are always key players behind the scenes, and with these two paths heading towards each other, ultimately a collision takes place. With Fami still hot on our tail, a radical group of high school cultists, an intriguing Denji bodyguard, old and familiar faces, and more questions than ever regarding the Horsemen, this is Chainsaw Man. If you're new to this series, I covered Chainsaw Man from a completely blind perspective of never having read the manga, and spoiler alert, I fucking love it. These are my completely blind thoughts, impressions, and review of Chainsaw Man's Chainsaw Man Church arc. After the events of the Falling Devil arc and the imminent prophecy of Nostradamus, every subsequent arc feels high stakes and in-game. Everything in our story has been leading up to this huge overarching plot and villain. The Four Horsemen, which in this series started as a shot in the dark of a theory and was vindicated to my speculation to death as the final villain, Chainsaw Man has been making all of my biggest desires as a fan come true, albeit with much more pain and misery than expected. With the theme of biblical end times and my favorite book of the Bible being Revelation, Chainsaw Man has been unreal to experience. All this to say, coming into this arc I had high expectations, but this arc did not disappoint. In fact, this arc is my favorite of part 2. When we jump into the beginning of this arc, we're brought back to the world of Chainsaw Man where we find Nayata in school, and anytime we see her in this story, I find myself with a slight smile. However, this smile didn't last too long. Her and the classmates discuss the missing students and the carnage from the recent events. There was an air of heaviness. This world isn't isolated, and it really immerses me with these instances of the ever-evolving world of Chainsaw Man. These discussions as well don't last too long as the SWAT team invades the school, coming for Nayuta. We're left on a little bit of a question mark regarding this, and there's a nice transition to Asa watching the news hearing of the death and destruction and how the Falling Devil even affected other countries across the world. With the influx of insane devils like the Gun Devil and Falling Devil in Japan, the public has caught on to the hero who's defeated them all being Chainsaw Man, and he's now grown a support base. Oh god, I wish it was just a support base, but the group we come to find out is known as the Chainsaw Man Church, which is the driving force of this entire arc. The church's objective is to fight alongside Chainsaw Man and drive out devils, and is propagated on TV by Asumi, one of Denji and Asa's classmates. With Asumi being so young, it has clear public backlash from some adults. After all, why is a kid leading the church? And Asumi even complains to none other than the puppeteer Fami about this. Really, could it be anyone else behind the scenes? A shrouded figure tells Asumi that he's the body and Fami is the brains, and that all his efforts are for a world of peace. Given the recent events, I get it. Asumi is a malleable high schooler and he truly believes he's doing the right thing by trusting Fami in this mysterious figure. I speculated at the time that this could have been the Justice Devil or perhaps a Primal Fear working alongside Fami, but clearly the shrouded panel is intentional. My immediate thought as well with the Chainsaw Man Church was that Fami was up to no good, and that the concept of a church worshipping Chainsaw Man serves to weaken Chainsaw Man as a concept. The more something is loved and praised and seen as normal, the lesser power a devil has. In the case of Yoru, she became so weak because Chainsaw Man swallowed up so many weapons and things of war that she was no longer feared. She was forgotten. Given the logic of the Chainsaw Man Church's objective, this stuck out to me right away as Fami's plan. As I'd soon find out, I was both correct and wrong. Just when I was wondering what Denji thinks of all this, we find him tied to a chair shirtless with Yoshida as his captor. He's always had a Denji obsession. Has this been his plan all along? Is my theory of Yoshida being in love with Denji finally coming true? I digress, but Yoshida informs them that his dogs and Nayata are safe and protected, that there's nothing to worry about. Well, I guess other than the fact that he's shirtless tied up in a basement. Yoshida tells Denji that all he has to do is stop being Chainsaw Man. A church that worships Chainsaw Man and the Public Safety Commission whose objective is for Denji to never appear again, these are two trains headed in the same direction on the very same track. I immediately thought as to why the public safety would want Chainsaw Man to disappear, and I couldn't shake the feeling it's because Chainsaw Man's existence is tied to so many devils coming out of the woodwork and causing destruction to Japan. Obviously, Chainsaw Man has made his enemies in hell, and perhaps the more he appears, the more these terrifying devils show up. Yoshida eventually brings Denji to a public place to discuss his request, but he chooses a pretty shitty place to do it. There's Chainsaw Man protesters and followers all at the same place, and with there being so many followers, Denji is moved by seeing so many people who like him, or well, at least part of him. Denji has always sought for connection, and now right in his face there's thousands cheering for his name and believing in what they think to be Chainsaw Man. However, it's not that simple. Denji and Chainsaw Man to them are not the same thing. They aren't connected to Denji as a person, but rather an idea of something. The idea and concept of Chainsaw Man exists without him now like a superhero. Yoshida informs Denji most of his followers are high schoolers, and it had me feel a little bit fishy as to the targeting of young individuals who are more easily drawn to something like this. It smelled a little bit, culty. Denji is very visibly torn about Yoshida's request, and due to that, Yoshida issues his very first threat, that being killing Nayuta. Albeit, I think it's a bluff because I don't think Yoshida is a bad guy, but nonetheless, wow. Denji is posed with giving up what made him special and loved for that who he cherishes. Yoshida's ask is for Denji to live out his dream of a normal life, the exact same thing he's always wanted. However, is the desire and dream forever the same, or do us as humans continue to want more and more? This concept is at the core of this arc. Denji's dream. Is it still truly a normal life? Hell, can he even live a normal life after all of this? The depth of these questions is hilariously juxtaposed with Denji yelling at his protesters to kill Yoshida and being incredibly stubborn, refusing to make one choice, and instead he chooses two, which wasn't even an option. The brief question of the SWAT team and Nayuta comes to be answered with Nayuta being brought to Denji as a reminder of what's at stake, and Denji goes home with Nayuta as he hears the chatter of Chainsaw Man everywhere he goes. As Denji takes care of Nayuta and settles into the routine with their animals, he makes his decision, which was an obvious one to me. He makes the decision to not turn into Chainsaw Man and live an ordinary life with Nayuta because he's happy how things are. As Denji talks to Pochita without an answer, he seems to question this happiness though, but this is drowned out by the happenings on TV with a public meeting of the stewing opposition to the Chainsaw Man Church and as well Chainsaw Man defenders. It's a back and forth of whether or not the church is acting within the realm of reason, and the tensions were extremely high until the Chainsaw Man Church informed the public that Chainsaw Man himself would speak to them. I chuckled with Denji being confused, thinking he was going to somehow appear and talk to the public. However, a member of the Devil Hunting Club appears claiming to be Chainsaw Man and informs the public he received his power from the Justice Devil, and the reason he fights is to create a world without devils and references Adam and Eve. Oh boy, we have a lot to unpack. First off, clearly this Chainsaw Man imposter was chosen because he's a much better candidate to represent the idea of Chainsaw Man than Denji, because Denji is a little bit problematic and uncontrollable. But what's most notable is his reference to all of the public that he received his power from the Justice Devil. This tipped me off because if he claims he receives his power from the Justice Devil, wouldn't that incline others to seek out the Justice Devil for power as well? This little statement is intensely sketchy and an immediate red flag. What solidified this suspicion to me is based on the theory from several videos ago, and it headcanon confirmed to me by referencing Adam and Eve. Fujimoto loves biblical references, and it served to continually hint at varying secrets in the story and overarching plot points. I went to a private religious school for about 12 years, so all that schooling is paid off in my analysis of Chainsaw Man. With the four horsemen, there is death, conquest, war, and famine. Biblically, the horseman famine carries a scale, and a scale makes sense because it weighs food. Sure, that's obvious, but Fujimoto has shown time and time again that he doesn't use literal meanings for things. With the falling devil, it wasn't just falling, but falling into despair. In this case, scales aren't just for food or weight, the scales of justice as in the Justice Devil. This will make Famine the leader or controller of the Justice Devil, and by his statements about the Justice Devil, it falls right into Fami's hands for potentially giving more power to the Justice Devil, which she controls. Fujimoto, let's fucking cook. With this news on TV, Denji crashes out as he realizes this man stole everything Denji worked for as Chainsaw Man. All the fame and praise he earned has now been given to someone else. It's a bit heartbreaking watching Nayuta confront Denji as he claims he's more than Chainsaw Man to him. Once more we see Denji struggle with his identity. Asa sees the broadcast as well and is perplexed by the difference between Chainsaw Man on TV versus the pervy one that saved her. This prompts a conversation with Yoru about whether or not Asa is in love with Chainsaw Man. In this discussion, Yoru is in good spirits due to the global effects of the falling devil and the inevitable push towards war, and she relishes in the thought of gaining back her power to kill Chainsaw Man. Of the four horsemen thus far, Yoru seems the most inclined to want Chainsaw Man dead rather than just manipulating him like Makima. There's some arguing amongst Asa and Yoru, and speaking of the four horsemen, Fami appears scaring both of them, which is pretty hilarious. Fami arrives to inform them both that their wishes have been granted, but first, let's eat. Fami says both Chainsaw Man can die and Asa can also save Chainsaw Man. Due to devils growing in power by eating others, Denji's existence as Chainsaw Man traps him in an endless cycle of devils hunting him, wanting more and more power. With Denji now temporarily retired, his followers want to eliminate all devils and allow Chainsaw Man to be forgotten and grow weak and live an ordinary life. This clocked my initial theory about why the church existed, but as I said earlier, this is only a fraction of the motive and a nice decoy. Fami enlists Asa to join the church and thereby help Chainsawman, and for Yoru's end of this magical wish, she informs them both that Red Chainsawman will have to become a human once more. I'd forgotten that devils don't really have an interest in faces, so it was a nice refresher of that concept and why she doesn't remember him. Yoru was unaware that she wants Black Chainsawman, which we saw fight Makima and the weapons, not the Red Chainsawman, which has saved Asa. I still have so many questions as to the true nature of Pochita and the Black Chainsawman and how it's such a stark difference in the form Denji takes, but I suppose only time will tell. Asa though immediately recognizes how fishy all of this is, but Fami preys on her emotions and her desire to protect and save Chainsawman. I'm honestly surprised Yoru isn't more wary of this proposition from Fami, but I suppose going along with the plan to weaken Chainsawman works out best in her favor nonetheless. Fishy or not, Asa joins the church and becomes a notorious devil hunter and rises in the public eye as one of the church's best members. As we're brought back to Denji in school, a fight breaks out amongst himself and a few others over Chainsawman, and after a trip to the principal's office, Yoshida appears out of nowhere as he does and takes him to the movies with a completely empty theater due to a dead devil near the screen, which serves as a further point to Denji that he's no longer needed. Yoshida even hits him with the "you aren't the protagonist," which is kinda true for at least part 2. However, this arc, Denji says hold my beer and takes the reins. The movie doesn't last long without a surprise as Yoshida tells him he set him up on a date with Fumiko, which is one of my absolute favorite characters this arc. Denji trauma dumps a bit onto her and really doesn't seem that enthused about the date, and instead is fairly depressed about everything. That is until she touches his wiener and hits him with a terrifying smile. Denji has a horrendous track record with females who express interest in him, but out of everyone, she's been by far the most forward. This panel of Denji getting his privates touched is actually a spoiler I saw months ago with zero context, just this panel on screen. And guys, I literally never see spoilers at all, but I suppose this panel was just so out there that it spread far and wide. I'm glad the spoilers for Chainsawman are things like this and not actual plot elements. The conversation on this date made me feel a bit uncomfortable because I had immediate serial killer vibes with Fumiko, and she tells Denji to go lick the dead devil if he wants to have sex. You know, after so long of Denji's character development, there's no chance Denji would fall for something like this. He has self-respect after all. Fuck, I spoke too soon. This was ridiculous. They end up at a karaoke room for some privacy, but firstly Fumiko has to sing some karaoke to set the mood. Honestly, these lyrics, they just baffle me. The juxtaposition of everything that's happening in this story, it's just perfect. This honestly almost makes Denji believe in having a normal life being pretty awesome, but normal and Denji don't really belong in the same sentence. There's innumerable assailants who are now all lined up outside the door and they break in, and it kind of reminded me of that one meme, and I know which one y'all are referencing, but as Fumiko sings, these men just keep coming, and I was more confused than anything about whether this is something she set up to have Denji attacked, or if this was just the typical chaos of Fujimoto. As Denji proceeds to endlessly beat the never-ending stream of men up, the singing started to feel more like a movie scene, with this being Denji's theme song. With the assailants all on the floor, it looks as if Fumiko and Denji are squaring up for a face-off, but I was bamboozled. She wasn't squaring up against Denji to fight him, rather save Denji from one of the final attackers. Denji, like myself, was perplexed and asks if she's his enemy, and she seems confused by the question as Yoshida pops up. Yoshida is hiding behind every single corner and still seems as sketchy as ever, and he informs Denji that she's actually a junior and that she's with the Public Safety Division and in charge of protecting Denji. Well, that explains things, I suppose. It turns out she kept singing because she didn't want her songs interrupted, so it seems she's the perfect bodyguard for Denji. They're both kind of crazy. With Fumiko, I absolutely love her design. She reminds me of a dark-haired Fami mixed with Kobeni, so I had some initial suspicion about her potentially being the fourth sister, but I think that's unlikely. Her personality's creepy, but in the best way, and she looks at Denji like an experiment and genuinely seems fascinated with him. Without a doubt, however, Fumiko is a fan of Denji or Chainsawman and seems super into him, but I don't really see this dynamic working out too well. Her purpose is to make sure Denji never has to transform again, which implies to me that she's incredibly strong, so I can't wait to see her fight and go all out. We're brought to Asa, and it's a parallel she's experiencing to Denji as she watches the news venerating her and calling her beautiful. While Denji is having all his credit and attention stolen, Asa is being praised for the first time in her life and recognized for her accomplishments. She's torn, however. Her goal is to help Chainsawman. She states that the fame doesn't feel good despite Yoru's enjoyment of it. The fame creeps her out and strips her of her privacy. This is once more a direct contrast to what Denji feels about potential fame. They're two sides of the same coin. I love this contrast Fujimoto continually presents with them. We're then brought to Denji looking at some of the church posters, and a hooded man laments Asa getting credit for any of the Chainsawman fame. This individual mentions being able to see scars on her face when she fights devils, and the hairs on my arm shot up. From what I understood, no humans were able to see this, so I immediately thought that this individual was a devil of sorts. Oh boy, the plot thickens. The strange man who approached him is none other than a fellow hybrid, the Swordman. What the fuck, the hybrids are back. Denji informs Sugo the Swordman that he'd never met him and just nonchalantly goes to school. I was geeking out at the hybrids while Denji had no care, which is perfect. Denji can't escape Sugo though, as he joins the school and all the girls fangirl over him and they meet on the roof outside. This meeting is atypical, however, as Fumiko uses Denji as a chair to discuss why the hell Sugo has joined the school. It turns out he's a Chainsawman church messenger and wants Denji to join the church. A panel with Sugo stating that the weapons walk with Chainsawman gave me chills as I was brought back to the weapons walking with Makima, which was arguably one of the most intense scenes of part 1. I'm glad they're brought back to the story so they can have even further development because the hybrids are an awesome addition to the story. This request for Denji to join the church isn't for him to be the leader of the church despite being Chainsawman himself, and instead he just get a high position, which is counterintuitive. Along with his offer, he tells Denji he can eat steak every day, and it turns into a sequence of Fumiko and Denji hypothesizing what they'd eat every day if they had the opportunity to, and the trolly nature of both of them derails the conversation and it devolves perfectly. Sugo persists and tries to resonate with Denji by telling him his entire life he's been used as a tool, but now he's finally free due to the church and Denji. The irony jumps off the page because the weapons exchange the chains of Makima for the leash of the church, but Sugo's heart seems in the right place. His negotiations don't succeed, but as he walks away he tells Denji if he joins the church he could have sex with as many women as he wants, and Denji literally teleports to the stairwell with a hysterical seriousness and tells Sugo he'd made a lot of considerations and that he would join the church. These moments in Chainsaw Man are everything, and I'd forgotten how much I'd missed Denji at the forefront of our story. As Denji arrives at the Chainsaw Man church, I was immediately drawn to the giant building with the Chainsaw Man head attached to it. It's quite a scary building, and we learn it previously belonged to some cult, and now, funnily another. Denji's tour guide for this church is Nobana, who's a male version of Kabini and an excellent tour guide. Inside the church, it's ornate with huge high ceilings like a cathedral and full of students as the overwhelming population of the church. As the tour continues, Sugo drops some anti-American statements and some varying American conspiracies from the church, and they're brought to a wedding chapel where individuals get married and soon after raise children in the church. The Chainsaw Man church is following the cult playbook to a T, and as Nobana explains his sentiments about the current societal structure and how they're fixing it, it once more drives home the notion that these young individuals truly believe in this and they're being manipulated. I started to have suspicion that Fami's plan with the church wasn't just about weakening Chainsaw Man, but perhaps something more malicious. This religious zeal and sense of righteousness can just lead individuals to do things they never previously dreamed of. Denji butts heads with the ideologies of the church and the blatant lies he points out, and before a confrontation comes to a head, a much older individual named Barum arrives, and I pondered whether or not he was the shrouded figure behind Asumi in the opening scene of this arc. His lines immediately struck me as nefarious with his questions about what would push Chainsaw Man to return. Would devil outbreaks bring him back? Would killing Asa bring Chainsaw Man back? This guy's evil and he's clearly been watching Denji behind the scenes to know his affinity towards Asa, but what confused me is why would he threaten the life of Asa while Asa is simultaneously part of the grand plan of Fami? It struck me as a mixed objective of Baron and Fami, unless there's something we're not being told. Barum tells Denji to picture weighing friends and family on one side of the scale and Chainsaw Man on the other and ask which side is heavier. Oh my god, I couldn't keep the smile off my face when these lines were said. These are the very scales of justice we talked about earlier with the Horsemen of Famine carrying. Right away, I theorized he was perhaps the Justice Devil who we've long been awaiting the reveal of. This introduction to Barum was insane, and my head couldn't stop spinning with theories and whether or not he'd be the overarching villain of this arc. After their encounter, Denji leaves the church and returns to normalcy with Nayata, and can I just say, seeing Nayata so much this arc warms my heart. As Denji goes about his routine, there seems to be a deep-seated feeling of missing something, and the portrayal of this through his facial expressions and aura he emits through the page is profound. He has everything he's always wanted, but something inside him still longs for more. Without Chainsaw Man, he loses part of what developed and molded him into who he is. It's one of the things that made him special, one of the things that made him fully not normal. The normalness hits hard and he wonders if this is what the rest of his life will be. Speaking from experience, once graduating college, reality does hit, and the normalcy does shake you to your core, so this experience from Denji really hits home. Nayata very sweetly consoles Denji and tells him if she stays with him forever then he'll be happy and lulls off to sleep. Nayata really views Denji as family, and seeing this dynamic really brings a lot of warmth to the life of Denji. Previously, seeing his life would invoke a level of sadness due to how alone he's been, but now he truly does have family, and crazily enough, it's the Control Devil. We're then brought to a church meeting and we find out that the following day is a day of worship and there'll be no devil hunting from the church members, and Sugo struggles with figuring out why Barum wants Chainsaw Man to come out, but his question isn't even properly answered. Instead, he states that hybrids are more than humans, weapons, and devils, and that they're born to kill, and that on the day of worship, they'll be forgiven no matter how many they kill. Holy fuck, this is reaching the climax of this arc, and we're fully reaching ahead with the church's intention of mass murder on the day of worship. I swirled in my head as to what their purpose could be with this mass murder and settled on this being all to evoke perhaps Black Chainsawman, but once more, I only had half of the picture. As we encountered Denji at a nice carnival on a beautiful day, my heart dropped. I knew this day would not be as it seems as we watch Nyota enjoy the rides and Denji and Fumiko hang out. Their discussion is distinct, with Fumiko stating how great being Chainsaw Man must feel and all the thrills that ordinary people never get a taste of. It felt like Fumiko was pushing Denji to struggle and address these feelings of normalcy once more, and he's forced to recall how great being Chainsaw Man is. I'm not sure her intention here, but I had mixed feelings regarding her vibe. Fumiko reveals her backstory after informing Denji she watches him in the restroom and tells Denji that Chainsaw Man didn't save her parents who were killed in the Gun Devil incident. The way she describes it is so visceral, and it puts into perspective the experience of just a regular civilian. Blood and gore everywhere, and the haunting noise of chainsaws. Denji, despite being a hero to so many, didn't save her parents or even notice them. As a result, Fumiko doesn't view Chainsaw Man as some grand hero at all, but she saw the human within Chainsaw Man when she saw Denji transform and break down into tears. Denji, like her, was just a kid, so she vowed to save this very kid that shouldered the world. This was really heartfelt, and I loved this characterization of Fumiko, and it took almost all of my general question marks towards her away. Simultaneously, I worried for her because these things don't bode well for those who particularly like Denji. There wasn't much time for many things heartfelt, however, as Barum appears and starts discussing what he wants of Chainsaw Man and informs them there will be an attack on the first floor with screams of "Save me, Chainsaw Man," and we see the weapons. Christ, there is an act of mass terror about to begin, and I was completely on the edge of my seat while reading. The weapons say their goal is to target women and children due to them screaming louder and to make the loss of limbs apparent to the victims to drive up their screams. This is so dark, and I had no idea how this would be able to be stopped. Denji was too far away, and these weapons truly feel like they're on a mission from God. As soon as the killing is about to begin, I'm gripping the pages and the weapons are cut in half. None other than one of my favorite characters of the story, Quan Chi, arrives after such an incredibly large hiatus and delivers the most perfect karma to these very bastards who just talked about mutilating women and children. Every time she's in the story, she takes the level of badassery to the next level. Character design, aura, sword skills, she's just unbelievably cool, and in terms of combat, she's on a completely other level than these weapons. The way Fujimoto does his paneling, it's so easy to read the action sequences as they flow so seamlessly as Quan Chi dismembers the weapons on behalf of the Public Safety Commission who she now works for. This was such a fantastic way to add her back into the story, and for the Public Safety Commission of all places. It's like rising in opposing factions with the Commission and the Church. I did wonder how the Public Safety Commission was able to have intel on the movements of the Church, and my first thought was there was a traitor amongst the ranks. Given the comparably pure-hearted nature of Sugo, he was high up on my list as a potential traitor, but I also have a general feeling of family loving the chaos, so she's the potential informant as well. As the news of the Church's violence spreading and the public message that the Commission will raid the Church, we've reached ahead for the conflict as the Church members gather as many weapons as possible in preparation. The raid on the Church begins with two individuals, one in the front and one in the back. With so many members, I was struck with curiosity for why just two individuals until I saw that the Vanguard was championed by Halloween and she flies through the building nailing students to the wall, solidifying another return of a beloved character to the story, and the back being secured by the Katana Devil who slices down a member of the Church who just turned to a devil, and the Katana Devil has such a personal vendetta against the Chainsaw Man due to the nut-kicking incident. I mean, who wouldn't? Fujimoto bringing so many characters out of the woodwork further emphasizes the intensity of this arc and the arcs to come. In stories, one of the flags that pops up for a proper endgame is the convergence of important characters throughout the story, and I personally can't get enough of it. Where's Rize, by the way? It seemed almost too simple, however, that the Association was able to subdue the Church so fast, and the Association seems to be on a media masterclass with everything planned out. They internally announced that the next order would be capturing the War Devil, who they know to be Asa, which I imagine they want to capture her to keep her safe and at bay just like Denji. Things indeed did seem too swiftly resolved as the Devil Name Consultant calls in and informs the organization that the Devil, which was defeated by Chainsaw Man days prior in the Falling Devil arc, was none other than the Justice Devil. The big player behind the scenes, which always pointed and was attributed to the Justice Devil, isn't the Justice Devil. Fake Chainsaw Man's public announcement of his attribution of his powers to the Justice Devil, it was a red herring because the name Justice Devil seems righteous enough and non-threatening. It makes sense why individuals would try to contract it, especially within the Church. It begs the question of how these individuals were then able to use the powers from the Justice Devil if the Justice Devil has been dead. Oh god. As it cuts to Barum, he looks off into the sunset with a smile singing Kumbaya as if he knows the future. These sequences of chapters are the ultimate climax of this arc. With Public Safety now knocking on Asa's door, rather than surrendering, she prepares to turn the room into a sword, and right when we're being edged for the room sword, Yoshida appears and cuts off her arm. Literally in almost subsequent chapters, there's about to be a giant transformation and it's cut off by Quan Chi and Yoshida respectively, and when I mean cut off, limbs are flying. This is the battle we've been waiting for, Yoshida versus Asa for Denji's heart. With two different sequences happening at once, the bomb drops on us that what the church members were told is that the Justice Devil grants contractors the power to transform into their desires, that this statement to the members is true, except for its name. One more of Fami's big surprises. With innumerable followers all contracting with this devil, we learn its true name, Fire. Holy shit, I always thought that the Justice Devil being so powerful of an entity didn't make as much sense to me, given that justice doesn't really elicit as much fear as something of what I'd imagine to be able to contract tens of thousands. But here we have it, the long-awaited reveal is here, or at least partially for the Fire Devil. And given it is fire, I wondered if this is confirmation of it being a primal devil. Fire seems to me one of the most primal fears, and primal fears are known to be the strongest of devils, so that checks out to me. In a horrific scene, tons of followers all sprout chainsaws from their head as they're turned into the entity they all worshipped. Countless times this arc, I've been unable to stop reading due to the insanity of Chainsawman, and this arc has truly outdone itself. It's revealed further that the Fire Devil grows in power the more contractors it has. The power system for it makes sense because the more fire spreads, the more powerful of a calamity it is. With the widespread transformation, these individuals are turned into what they desire most. It's like the fire of desire in Christianity, which as a concept represents a deep yearning for spiritual connection. In this case, they are one with their perceived God, and Fujimoto loves his biblical references. Fire as an element itself is transformative. It purges and in its destruction creates anew. These worshippers are transformed through the Fire Devil and lose their humanity and become devils. In retrospect, the powers of fire are way more fascinating than simply just pure fire. Devils in this story and their powers are so layered and never right on the nose. This mass elimination of human life due to the actions of the church follows the expected ending of this cult, but despite seeing it coming, it doesn't really make it easier to see. With Barem dropping this nuke of information, he tells the public safety alongside Denji and Nayata that in 6 months the prophecy will come to fruition with the King of Terror descending on this world, and that he alongside Fami will aim to kill the king and save humankind. Fami is the great mastermind of this plot and the overarching villain, but it's clear that the prophecy foretells of the true final boss. Nayata confirms this statement due to her being able to sense the King of Terror, who is none other than the Death Devil, the strongest devil in existence. I've always speculated that the Death Devil would be the strongest of all the devils due to that being the most universal primal fear, but seeing it confirmed is everything. Nayata is finally able to see Fami's plan with Barem's statements. She wants to make everyone fear Chainsawman in war, thereby getting them strong enough to combat the last and final horseman. The setup for this has been such a long time coming, and this reveal of all the converging pieces is some of Fujimoto's best work. Asa and Denji have been co-protagonists, and together they'll face death itself to save the world. I can't imagine a better final plot, and I'm enthralled with Chainsawman. I still have such a huge distrust of Fami, but if her plan and fears of what to come are true, then I understand her motives, and thereby I don't think she's necessarily a pure evil villain, but mass murder and war to stop the apocalypse is literally insane. There has to be another way than this. Denji and Asa won't go silently along with her plan, and I hope they'll do everything in their power to stop the apocalypse and the mass spread war and death to come that Fami truly believes is necessary to save humanity. As if things couldn't get any worse, Barem yells to the public that Nayata is a witch and the Chainsaw Head Devils converge on Denji, Fumiko, and Nayuta. Given Nayata is Denji's family, I'd imagine Fami and Barem decided to target Nayata because it would send Denji over the edge, perhaps bringing back Black Chainsaw Man. And as well, if Nayata is killed when she's reborn, perhaps she'd take the side of Fami. I'm surprised this didn't make Denji transform, but I think due to him not feeling a huge immediate threat, he knew they'd be fine. Absolute chaos then ensues as Quan Chi arrives to carry 3 people simultaneously, Mommy, and jumps off a building before breaking her leg to then somehow sprint more. Metal. I'm so glad to have her back in the story, and as Barem accurately states, it's like she's some manga character come to life, and Quan Chi brings them to safety, avoiding the pseudo Chainsaw Head Devils. Well, at least it felt safe just for a moment. With the varying civilians now in a panic, they quickly identify Denji based on being a high schooler as a likely Chainsaw Man church supporter, and they prepare to attack him. This unfortunately is where the group winds up being separated, with Quan Chi stopping a bullet with her arm and telling them to run. In retrospect, I really wish Quan Chi just stayed with them, but damn, what a heroic stand. Can we just take a moment to appreciate the panel transition of Quan Chi's bleeding arm to Asa's cut off arm? I can't wait to see it animated in 10 years? With us brought back to the fight versus Asa and Yoshida, Asa's room sword causes her room to completely disappear, and it's an insane concept to turn whatever you own into a power. Seeing an entire room vanish into a sword makes me ponder just how big of something Asa could transform. With Yoshida attempting to stop her with his octopus contract, Yoru emerges with a giant-ass sword splitting the octopus in pieces. If you know me, you know I'm a sucker for anything with swords, so this panel was elite. Yoru confirms that they were able to turn their room into a weapon without touching it, and that their power is increasing. If we've currently just been scratching the surface of Yoru's powers, then we're in for so many more treats. With a good old-fashioned Western standoff, I had to reread these sequences of panels because I thought I missed something. But nope, Yoru going in to attack Yoshida launches herself into another building due to the sheer power she possesses. What an unreal power-up physically with her body unadjusted to the new power increase. This will definitely be something for her to get used to. And I question whether or not this base amp of power is just while she has the room sword, or if this strength will somehow remain due to her now continuing to become more powerful. Yoshida makes a grand decision and understands when a battle is lost, and he flees. Honestly, hilarious, and I couldn't expect anything else. With Yoru now standing amongst a neighborhood of ruin, it was a chilling scene as she rejoices in the burnt bodies, fires, and destruction, knowing that the world now remembers her. Her power increase was the confirmation that she was back, that war itself is back. Seeing in real time the fear of war spread and it directly affecting Yoru is such an epic moment and makes the scene all the better. We finally see true joy within Yoru, and it felt like the villain finally achieving what they wanted at last. The ever-evolving world of Chainsawman continues to evolve as the humans now wage war against the devils, and mass-spread violence is everywhere. In such a short time, society has damn near descended into an apocalyptic movie. With our trio of Denji, Nayata, and Fumiko, they wander an alley witnessing all the chaos as Fumiko instructs them to come to the public safety headquarters. Part of their family's still at home, and they can't just leave their pets. This obviously causes a conflict with Fumiko and Nayata, and we witness some of Nayata's fighting prowess where she utilizes her control chains to control an elderly woman who then tries to choke out Fumiko, only for Nayata to be stopped by Denji. Nayata is still grasping a fraction of her power, but seeing her propensity to violence when it comes to her family was a refreshing reminder that although she is the control devil, she's no Makima at all. Sadly, this encounter causes Fumiko to flee as we're now left to continue with some hard to read chapters as Nayata and Denji go home. This interaction leads to poignant discussion with Nayata having no care about potentially killing Fumiko and explains this is just what devils do. They kill. It's natural, and we can see in these panels a clear concern in Denji's eyes for this mentality. Denji raised her better. Nayata then drops a bomb of a question and asks Denji to join the devil's side with her. I was shocked while reading this, and it felt like a true divide began between Denji and Nayata. Nayata then comments on the suffocating nature of human culture and how they could simply rule over them. She has no care for Denji's friends or classmates and doesn't understand why Denji would. After all, Nayata is all he needs, right? Control isn't as simple as ruling over something, it's also wanting those you rule over to only have you. Control is isolating, and Nayata being the controlled devil is extremely jealous of anyone in Denji's life and wants Denji to only have her. It's like a toxic relationship, except in this case Nayata is like his sister or daughter. You can see such pain in Denji's eyes overhearing how she feels about it. There's a level of sadness and exhaustion. He's never been given an easy path, and the one family member he has is saying things in such contrast to everything he is and everything he wants. Nayata continues to question and point out why Denji has a soft spot for Asa, and Denji explains that when he kissed her, it was the first time he didn't get hurt. This is heartbreaking. Denji has always wanted love, and every girl who he's ever liked has tried to kill him, except for Asa. She's the exception. Denji has always had such a warped concept of whatever he thought true love to be. He initially mistook lust for love and let Makima walk all over him for the hopes of connection. But now he finally has a taste of connection and he longs for Asa. It's a heartfelt and deep insight into Denji that he's not just some horny teenager, he's always been and always will be something looking to fill the void in his heart. In many ways, Nayata has filled that void by providing family, but she cannot be solely his world. While reading, I felt a brief divide brewing, but when Denji reminded Nayata how much he loves her, she decided no killing humans and they can return home. Nayata has so much development this arc and we're really getting to understand her more and more as an individual, but we'll get to that later. As Nayata and Denji head home, there's an eerie level of normalness going on despite the chaos. From seeing all this chaos, Denji is reminded of the beauty of his ordinary days. Times with Nayata and the dogs and Meowie. Experiencing so much chaos made Denji aware that he's living the life he always dreamed of, that he doesn't need to be Chainsawman anymore, that he's truly happy. We cut to seeing Denji as a child speaking to Pochita that their dream came true, and Pochita asks him what he'll dream next. Seeing Pochita back in the story made me realize that something intense is about to come, and with Denji taking the form as a child, it made questions start stirring. What is next for Denji? What is his dream? Denji seems perplexed by the question in his adult form, but his child form says he wants to be Chainsawman. From Denji answering so definitively that he wants to be Chainsawman while in the form of him as a child speaks to his truest and most original desires. Psychologically, so much of our life and desire stems from pleasing the inner child within all of us. It's our most pure and unadulterated desires, not pushed on us by societal constraints or responsibility. Fujimoto seems to be revealing what Denji truly wants at his core. A horrendous scene then transpires. As they return home, they find it engulfed in flames. Their pets, their memories and mementos of Denji's past, everything is destroyed and we see Denji truly broken. My god, Denji has continually been robbed of his happiness at every turn, and seeing his life unfold, especially in moments like this, makes me feel so intensely for him. Just when things seem to be going well, Fujimoto always strips us of this very notion. Chainsawman evokes so much emotion, and for me that's the essence of what I want in a story, and there's very few that can top the emotional roller coasters of this. Barum claims responsibility with a disgusting smile, knowing he's pushed Denji to transform, and Barum, unlike the other antagonists thus far, seem to truly be doing it for sadistic pleasure. Barum claims responsibility with a disgusting smile, knowing he's pushing Denji to transform, and Barum, unlike the other antagonists thus far, seems to be truly doing it for sadistic pleasure. As a villain, he serves as an objective evil and seeks the ruin of Denji. There's never been a character in this story so far I've wanted more dead than him, and I had chills reading the panel with Denji clutching at his chest to pull the starter as I wish for Denji to get his vengeance and have his rage seen. As the story comes to a head, public safety attacks Barum while simultaneously having some of the weapons take down the public safety members. These weapons, who previously Quan Chi defeated, escaped and now face Denji, with Sugo pleading to Denji that this was all necessary to save the world. Of the weapons, he seems to be the only one misguided enough to believe this to be true, and the whip hybrid scoffs at the notion. Nayata then tries to stop Barum, who she's unable to control. Barum's ideology is then revealed. He believed in Makima and using Chainsawman to defeat death. He believed in the world she promised to him, and he then tells Denji these flames are his punishment for destroying this world. His pets, Nayuta. Barum seeks to destroy everything Denji cherishes. Once more, his life is brought to ruin by another, and it all builds into Denji seeing Pochita in the flames. He sees his young self waving back, and Denji loses control. His twisted rage scene finally happens. With everything in ruin and destroyed, he rises from the flames as Chainsawman. However, Denji isn't full of despair, but instead his whole aura becomes dark. He tells Nayata to get away from him and thinks to himself that despite all the loss today, he feels great. It's Denji embracing his shadow and understanding that Chainsawman is a part of him. Whether everyone loves or hates Chainsawman, it is nonetheless a core of his own internal identity. Embracing the shadow is why I believe Denji feels so elated. With everyone telling him what he should be and what he should do, he decides to do what he wants himself. And in this case, it's what he does best, and the violence begins. Denji's craftiness in battle is underrated, and it's in large part due to him having no restrictions. He'll gladly get cut and hurt if it gives him an angle, and in this battle he even drinks the blood and eats some of the weapons. There's clear horror in the eyes of the Whip Devil because of Chainsawman's powers to erase devils, but due to this being Red Chainsawman and Denji himself, that power I doubt works the same as if it's Black Chainsawman. When Denji ate Makima, he didn't erase her clearly, so I don't think these hybrids will be erased either. Nonetheless, feeding off of the flesh and blood of the weapons allows his rapid regeneration, and these hybrids get what had been long coming to them: true fear and utter horror. We haven't seen Denji feral like this in so long, and I felt a level of guilty catharsis while watching it. Denji seems to go kind of insane and extremely shut off emotionally. He doesn't seem to care in the moment for Nayata and tells her she shouldn't be around him anymore. I don't think Denji truly meant this though, but in the moment he's embracing the worst part of himself. Relishing in the violence and embracing being Chainsawman in part makes him feel such mixed emotions, and I'm sure to an extent, a level of undeservedness of family or love. He's pushing Nayata away in this altered state not only for the reasons I just mentioned, but to protect her. With these hybrids so easily defeated, I'd expect some aspect of catching our breath, and as Denji catches his own, the public starts stabbing him due to him just being another of the pseudo Chainsawman to them. Denji is treated like a wild beast, and all of the public's anger and loss, it's all taken out on Denji. He becomes the target for their revenge and retribution. Despite Denji's effort to have Nayata leave, she pleads with the public for Denji. Denji's her family and she won't abandon him. She's forced to choose between saving Denji and the promise she made not to kill, and she starts using her Control Devil abilities to protect him, and now Nayata will be the hero to save Denji. Nayata, despite being a devil, exhibits so much humanity, and her expression shows so deeply her care for him. She's a devil fighting for the humanity in Denji and for him not to succumb to his worst desires. When everything is pushing for Denji to give in to the devil in him, she's there to save him. As she continues to control others and causes mass confusion, Fumiko, who arrived back with the public safety previously, she flees just like Yoshida. Although in this case I didn't find it humorous like I did with Yoshida, because Nayata is truly on her own. With Fumiko making her second exit, her closing words of Chainsawman being in trouble if he loses his heart being so vocally announced, and her general humor of the circumstances, it made me question her true intent once more, and I know our story with her isn't nearly done. With Nayata being pointed out as a devil working with Chainsawman, the public now corners her as she buys enough time to control a human to bring Denji to safety and protect him. I love the cockiness she has when she whispers to Denji, "So you thought you didn't need me?" Nayata is amazing. With Nayata now able to go all out with Denji in safety and out of sight, she learns that killing humans isn't fun at all like she thought it would be, which reflects even more of her humanity. However, she isn't strong enough to just kill everyone and flee the situation. There's limits on her powers due to being so young. With so many people lurching towards her with weapons in a horrific scene, it's like a before-death moment, and we're brought back to a flashback of Nayuta and Denji the first day he brought her home. From their very first interaction, she felt pity for Denji and questioned why she would want his heart. It's something that she was born with wanting, and with her power, she's able to scour his memories and in part understand part of her past self. Nayuta's left to struggle with this old self and her identity. Are these feelings and desires her own? Is this what she was meant to do? Will taking Denji's heart bring her to understand herself? She decides in that early moment that she would fulfill Makima's plan, but Fujimoto, through showing us memories, shows us exactly how this plan would change. Dog walks, games, pictures, pets, the ordinary human life that they experienced together. It brought her such a true and pure joy to be together with him. Being raised by Denji gives Nayuta something Makima never had: a family, a true connection, the ability to be seen. I had tears well up seeing Nayuta learn to love and truly cherish Denji. Denji has what he's always wanted. These panels were then contrasted with Denji as a child talking to himself, telling him he could never have his own family. After all, he killed his own father. It felt like we saw Makima talking to him through the grave. These scars she added are never able to leave. Denji's internal voice as a child reflects his deep-seated feelings of undeservedness of love that were further propagated by Makima. These feelings are those he faces every day and are covered by his life with Nayuta, but these things suppressed one day rise to the surface. We see Denji then awake in a hospital bed as the final scene of this arc. Given his clear safety, I'm sure the Public Safety Commission got their hands on him and that he's secure. He was never my big concern though, our boy will always be okay. But with Nayuta surrounded by a horde of people wanting to kill her, I had such a deep angst with the conclusion of this arc. There's no way Fujimoto kills her off screen. He's definitely an on-screen killer of characters to really make us suffer, but I don't see how she properly gets out alive unless there's a miracle of some sort. With recent Chainsawman arcs, I was left with each conclusion the feeling of being able to catch my breath in some sort of resolution, but with this arc, I'm left seeing Japan collapse into war after the mass murder of children, an imminent apocalypse ushering in an age of terror, Denji's internal sadness, and Nayuta on the cusp of death. I've had to have so much self-control to not read any further before I wrote this script, and if you can't tell by the length of this video, this arc has been an utter blast for me. Fujimoto has once again captured every emotion within an arc, and of the arcs of part 2, this has felt the most complete, with the biggest plot elements driven forward with the imminent prophecy of Nostradamus, but even more importantly, this arc has developed our protagonist way more than before. Witnessing Nayuta grapple with her devil tendencies and her humanity, and ultimately choosing humanity because of Denji, gives her an entirely new added layer. She's no longer simply just a quippy, cool, and cute addition to the story, but a vastly integral member to stopping the end of humanity. She's Denji's true family, and it adds another reason for Denji to keep fighting. Denji, despite his losses, has rebuilt his life, and tragically the church has attempted to destroy it. But I have faith that he will carry this loss and not let him be consumed by all that transpired this arc. Denji will stop the prophecy and actualize his dream. However, this dream may have changed. I'm ecstatic to have the most complete story of Chainsawman we've ever had. We have the overarching plot driving everything forward with the eventual arrival of the Death Devil and the Final Horseman. We have an amazing antagonist within Fami, Yoru, and Barum, and we have the Public Safety Commission having an incredible cast of characters added to it. Literally, the Public Safety has Yoshida, Fumiko, Quanchi, and the Katana Man. It's like every group is stacking up their powerful members, and it makes it so there's no more boring chapters at all. I truly love this cast. With war on the rise, Yoru has grown in power exponentially, and the last we've seen of her was relishing in the new destruction, and I love the cliffhanger we're left on for it. Yoru, as y'all know, is my favorite design of the story, and I love the dichotomy of Asa and Yoru. And with the now knowing Fami's plan, it makes me all the more excited for the potentiality of Asa and Denji to come together and fight against one common evil. As typical for Fujimoto, there's always more questions than answers, and there's so much left to explore. Fami's plan may be laid out, but thus far she's been shrouded in mystery and has proven time and time again to not be someone you can trust. The Fire Devil remains a mystery as his power has completely shaken up the story. Guys, the Death Devil is so near, and I'm ecstatic to be covering Chainsawman again as we reach peak. The Chainsawman Church arc has shaken the story to its core and delved into some of the greatest characterization of the story thus far. Denji has once again shown that despite whatever hell you may face, there's always a reason to keep going. You can keep moving forward even without knowing what's next. His dream may remain a question, but he has to continue living in order to find it out. As Denji grapples with his identity and his shadow, as he's forced to choose between his nature as a devil and as a human, Fujimoto nudges us to understand that regardless of being a devil like Nayuta or a human like Denji, we can embrace both the light and the dark and choose to walk a path of our own volition, of our own destiny. What will happen next? Will war continue to rage between humans and the newly turned devils? How imminent will this prophecy of Nostradamus arise? Will Denji be able to protect Nayata from Fujimoto? And most importantly, will Fanme continue to get me to fanboy? I guess we'll find out next time. If you stuck around this long, please do consider dropping a subscription to see more videos just like this. This has been hiXtrah, and as always, be greedier, and I will catch you all next time.